Why am I on this couch? Because today we're talking to a psychologist, and that's not just any psychologist. Stay tuned. Today with Massimo Mancini, a psychologist with international experience. Massimo worked both in LA and in Rome, and he's gonna help us understand the differences between these two cities. Massimo, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I graduated in LA. Is a psychologist, clinical psychologist, and then I decided to specialize myself in the United States, where I moved in the '99. So I'm licensed as a marriage family therapist in California, and also I'm a certified anger management. I had a chance to practice also therapy, counseling in the United States. One thing that I really liked about the American approach, especially in the field, is they are very pragmatical. Here in Europe, in Italy, it's too theoretical. Because I think any job you do in your life, if you have that professional experience made on the field, it does make you a good professional.
Absolutely.
And this kind of experience, I have to thank the United States for that. Because one of my first places where I started working in LA, it was in a mental health institution. With a schizophrenic patient, with a major depression patient, with all kind of pathology, major depression clients. And that was like incredible experience, let me tell you. And at the time I was working for the Los Angeles Unified District School.
Okay, so youth and family, they seem to be two of your strengths, right?
Yeah.
Two of your specialties.
In addition to anger. And I realized that everybody has a problem with anger. Adults and children, because it's different courses.
What is the difference?
Children are less verbal. They tend to act out. And so when you work with them, you cannot be just verbal and provide like verbal information. You organize games with them, you organize all kind of practical material. So the approach is completely different. And and it was interesting because with adults you work in a completely different way. But the good thing is that is something that honestly I wish they would be able to transfer all this kind of structure. Like I think mostly all over the United States, there is a program that provides support for those people that've been having problem with anger. So in case, and it's very common because there's a support is also works together with the legal system. If somebody is threatening his wife, for example, or his partner, you receive a restraining order from the government, from the judge, that says basically that you have to attend anger management classes. Most people have, there are people that they tend to act out their anger. So it's physical, it's violent, it's aggressive. Other people, they don't act out, but they take in. That's called introverted anger. In this case, the anger it can easily be converted in a psychosomatic disorder, like depression, like frustration, and these kind of feelings, they've been easily transformed in passive-aggressive behavior, with irony, with sarcasm, or this kind of thing. So it's a different way to express anger. The people, they appear to be so quiet and mellow, apparently, under the surface, they've been built in like a volcano.
Yeah.
Ready to explode in any time. And that's funny because it reminds me of a famous movie, because I have a passion for movie stuff. A famous movie in which like there is what's the famous actor, Michael Douglas. One day in which he got crazy on the freeway. And it's interesting because on a neurological level, a lot of professionals, they were able to point out the fact that on a physiological level, what's going on, that we have like what is called the famous hot zone in our brain. And when we get the point of the hot zone get triggered, for so many reasons, that most of the time we are unaware about that, what happened that we just react. And when we react, there's no capability to be rational, to being able to control any emotions.
Can something like that happen in Rome?
Absolutely, all the time.
It happens.
Absolutely, oh yeah. The only thing that in Rome we are not aware about that, and the system doesn't support. Because if something like this happens in LA, the legal system, they force you. Even though here there is like the idea, if the client doesn't request help, the work wouldn't work. No, it will work, even if it doesn't request. If he's been forced to go to a psychologist or for example to anger management group, it still will work because you've been forced by law to do that. Otherwise, you won't be able to go back to work. You won't be able to do anything.
So in California, you can be forced to take therapy or counseling,
yes.
right?
Yes.
And in Italy,
not at all.
You can. Okay.
Because this is the idea that you cannot be forced to do anything here. So it's just up to you. But still, I believe that most professionals have is like, if you don't express your desire to change or to get better, the work will work.
Yeah.
So you cannot, for the same reason, in terms of setting or structure, you cannot go to the people and say, do you want to get some therapy? Versus, over there, because also the system works completely different. This is the insurance system, and also most of the provider in terms of like work environment, they provide some sort of benefits, and most of those benefits include like health support, medical support, all kind of health support. And this also includes like psychotherapy or counseling. So people easily can get this kind of physical health support, mental support. There's no such thing in Italy. And that's like a huge, like, I will say, problem in the system because the people cannot get help.
Until they cross the line, right?
Until they cross the line. Even they cross the line, that's the problem. Because even they cross the line, see, if you don't have money, they get hospitalized.
Where?
In a mental institution here in Italy. They've been forced to go there, usually by psychiatrists. After that, what they do? Usually they go to these places and they've been like medicalized, of course, to be stable, calm. But after a few weeks or few months, if they get stable and calm, after that they are out again. For example, my first experience, I was working this sort of mental health institution. It was in like close to Huntington Beach, that area, and in order to be patient over there, they have to follow all the policy of the hospital, the center. It will be like taking medication, follow all the groups, attend the participation to the group, be active. And they were completely supported by the system because all the money they got from government was going to this center to support them on any level, medical, physical, cleaning, restaurant. I mean, that was because this center was a complete center. I mean, that they were providing food, medical assistant, nursing assistant, all kind of stuff. And so these centers in Italy, they don't have time to survive because all they've been part of the structure. Like in the past, they used to have like what's called like ospedali psichiatrici. They closed them because they were doing awful things over there. But now they created this little center where the people still have a problem because it's all basically because the system doesn't support these people, and so these people they feel like abandoned to themselves. And that's the problem because if there is not a structure to support the situation, there's no work for the people that work in this field to help those people, and there's no work for nobody being able to support those people because family usually aren't capable to do that. It is not training also for the family. They've been living with somebody with a mental disorder.
Exactly. It's very difficult for the family, but they just don't know how to help them. And
usually what they used to do in the past here in Italy, like most of those countries even similar to us, they try to hide everything under the carpet. So they pretend that nothing exists. That doesn't work like that. Because sooner or later the problem will come up again.
Well, would you say the same happens in California?
No, because there's no shame and people don't feel like this is not some sort of a social embarrassment. So people, they really don't care about what the other people think about themselves. It's like, in that way, I admire them because they are more independent. If somebody had a problem, they didn't feel ashamed or uncomfortable, just ask for help. and this is very good in terms of like motivation. So the work is really well done in terms of providing social support for people.
Right.
And it's interesting versus here, apparently, even though this is a social state things, but if you have a problem and you say, I want to go to, for example, in Italian it's ASL.
What is ASL?
ASL?
I mean, I know, but for the viewers.
It's public system for health. It's ASL stands for Assistenza Sanitaria Locale.
Okay, but when you talk about anger management, can you compare the level of anger in Rome and in LA? Is it possible to do something like that?
I'm not sure about that because the thing that over there, because the system is efficient. In other words, if you act out, somebody can intervene. If they call the police because there is like a fight in the family, the police try to intervene, and most of the time they get on time. And Italy, they don't work so efficiently. That's the thing.
Okay, but what they work with, would you say that level is higher in the States or higher in Italy? Is it possible to compare the level of anger?
Usually the level of anger works this way. We all have some sort of triggers. And so on a certain level, anger is like defense mechanism that help us to keep us safe and healthy. Because it's some sort of strength, extra, and I like to use the words extra energy that we have when we want to stand up for ourselves, or when to set up our boundary, whatever is good for us. And until we reach the point, it's okay. Anger is good, it's not negative. When anger became negative, when you cross the line, when this self-protective instinct push you on the edge, so you're not able to control yourself anymore. So when you cross the line, you stop to respect the other one, and you cross the boundary, and that's when the anger became a problem, because you're not able to control yourself, and so you act out all this extra energy. But if you are able to do this, to put this energy in something artistical, for example, singing, painting, it's a great thing, because you can channel all this extra energy, let's put it this way, in a positive, constructive way, versus being distracted. Because usually who is gonna pay the highest price for the anger? All the people around the angry person. Because the angry person is gonna create some sort of situation or reality in which it's like being with someone and being on pins and needles all the time. You don't know how it's going to react to that situation. So you don't know what to say. You don't know how to do or what to do in that situation to not trigger all these points that can make the other one get crazy or ballistic in a few seconds.
Is it possible to look at the triggers in LA and in Rome and make a comparison?
Not really, because the triggers are basically all the same. So whenever you feel like not respected, whenever you feel like not loved, or even worse, not considered, when you touch those basic things that we all have, you can snap and react to situation. That most of the time, 90% of the time, those triggers, they been with us for our life. So usually those triggers, they are the results of a situation that we've been experiencing since we were a baby or child. And when you've been building up this situation for many, many years, you become like some sort of
time bomb.
Exactly. Yeah. And anything can make you react.
In your view, from your experience, who is more likely to go around with a baseball bat and use it? Someone from LA or someone from Rome?
Maybe someone from LA.
Why is that?
Because in Rome, it's also has to do the way we deal with our emotions. In Italy, because we are so used to, we are so emotional on many levels. And so we are more familiar with those emotions. Usually those emotions don't try to scare people. So if you see somebody is angry, doesn't have a problem to express his anger.
In Rome.
In Rome. He doesn't hide. So it's, and if he does, he still will find a way to make you understand he's angry or pissed off. Just the way he looks at you, the way he treats you, or being sarcastic, being ironic, try to being very razor sharp with the jokes, razor sharp with you, towards your person, your personality, being very critical to you. And that's the way you express your anger here.
So you'd say...
And this is kind of positive, in a negative way, but it's positive. Because as long as the anger stays in, it's like a timing bomb. If the anger goes out, it's a little bit better.
Okay, so if I understand right, Romans have, a bit more finesse, with their anger.
Yeah, they're more familiar with that, with those feelings, with those emotions. Versus other society, for example, all the society are very rigid rule and structure. In that society, it's not allowed. It's not allowed to express yourself, express emotion, express anything. And so, people get anxious about those expressing emotion.
But funny.
And anger is one of the emotions, unfortunately. That's the thing. It's about surviving. And anger, the difficulty of anger, because compared to any other emotions, anger, usually most of our emotions are they are connected with the way we feel it. Anger usually it's aimed. So I get angry to someone, to a specific situation. That's why when we're growing up and we build up this angry attitude or personality, and that's why it's so important when you work with people with anger to define those triggers, because these are triggers that maybe I developed during my life, growing up. I keep repeating the same pattern over and over. And my reaction will be always the same. And so what you do when you try to work on these people, helping these people to manage this anger, what you do, you try to break the pattern of behavior. For example, teach them, is there anything else you can do in that situation?
So for anyone coming to Rome, what would be a number one trigger that gets Romans angry? So I rephrase it. What should I avoid in order not to get anyone angry in Rome?
Don't stare at people in the eyes, that's for sure. That's one thing that works.
Is that what pisses Romans off when you stare at them? Yeah.
Well, it's very important what kind of a message your face is sending out. So if you stare someone in the eyes, because for example, that's a tricky part, because in our society, to stare someone in the eyes, to maintain eye contact when you talk to someone, it means that you are interested. It's a very important thing. In some culture, exactly the opposite. That's why it's important when you work, especially with a multicultural ethnicity, to know what this preparation background is and how do you work with them. And the approach is different. I remember one of my colleagues, she sent me a couple of patients that she was working with, because they were Italians and immigrant. And they used the common Italian way of talking and to relate with each other, screaming and yelling. But in a session, if you start to scream and yell, America gets sensitive about that. They don't get it. It's just a normal way that we talk. We talk loud, we scream and yell, we are very ironic, we talk over each other all the time, we don't respect the other one, and so it's like, and that's the way we are. So for me it was normal, for her it was shocking. So she said, you work with them, I don't want to work with them.
So one thing, both countries have one thing in common, which is maintaining a strong eye contact. But what you're saying is what also matters is what kind of face those eyes sit on.
Yes. I used to work with everybody, like couple counseling, separate family, or the people that are getting close to get separation. So it depends, but that means you work basically with everybody. And it's different, for example, when you work with the family. I like to work in a setting where there is more than one patient, because most of the time it's more effective. The work that usually you do with the client, with the patient, when you come in your session, is to work on his weak and strengths, to make him stronger in terms of face those challenges that so far until that moment in life they were not able to see. Because most of the time when they come in the session, they feel like desperate, hopeless, they feel like my life is not going to change or whatever I will do. And then you give some hope to them, and then you work with them and say, you know what, it's not that you are like on the track and there's no way to change it. There's always a way to change it. You need always to find a way to work, to find the positive in that client, because otherwise you won't be able to do any work at all. So, and that's something very important, not be judgmental with people. Take people for whatever they are. When you express opinion, you're already being critical and judgmental, and that's the moment you lose the client. Because the client doesn't feel understood. And it's so important, the client feels understood. So when you work in a setting with someone, the people that come in session, they need to feel like that's the place where I always wanted to be, where I can feel free to say whatever comes to my mind. And this is the basic steps that we have to do in order to get better. Because if we, and most of the time people, because they get stuck by being so fearful for everything, even though they come to session to say, you know what, I want to work on this problem. But then you notice there is something, there is some sort of discrepancy between what they say and what they really want to do. Because on a verbal level, they may say, you know what, I want to work on this problem. But then they do exactly the opposite.
What's behind that?
The contradiction that you have in life, the contradiction between most of the time the inability to get in touch with their own emotions, being in touch with your inner child. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, those people, they don't have any control on the inner child. And the inner child controls their life. And the inner child is the one that's going to make you fire if you go to work and to say, go fuck off to your boss. Because the inner child doesn't have any control. And so we need to learn to give some space to the inner child, but then being able to control it. And most people here, I think more here than in the United States, they have a problem to get in touch with that, with the inner child.
Can we stop there for a second? So, when you look at the inner child issue, would you say people in Rome or people in LA are better connected with their inner child?
The people in Rome are more connected with their emotions. They are more emotional. So they get crazy easily, they get angry easily, they get passionate easily, apparently, from a cultural background. Then in reality, we have to go on a specific case. But generally speaking, on a cultural level, we are more familiar with emotions. Being angry, being depressed, being frustrated. Because I think it has to do with also our background. So most of the time we learn in our school, in our society. So in a way or another, we kind of learn from our society how to express emotion in a positive and negative way. And this is because our society has not so many strict rules. I mean, the rules for us is something very kind of undefined.
Optional.
It's an optional. If you want to follow, it's okay. If you don't want to follow, it's still okay. It doesn't matter. Versus other countries, other cultures where rules need to be followed. For example, I was comparing myself with my friends of mine when I was living in LA, who was still Italian. Was typical Italian, was getting loud, angry, aggressive, because he felt like if he didn't act like that, he couldn't get listened by anybody. And so in order to be respected, he was screaming, yelling to everybody. Even people that they were respecting him. So he was bringing his own behavior from Italy to the United States. Here you need to have some sort of, I would say, protection shield. Somebody can be trying to take advantage of you, abusing you, or anything. And so you go around like with an angry face.
In Rome?
In Rome, especially in Rome and in the south of Italy. It's different. In LA, I felt like more relaxed. Because I knew that in one another, the system will they will intervene to stop anything could happen. And you feel like protected. You feel like respected over there. Even though it's not real, but that's the perception you have. So you can be relaxed. Even though you come from Italy with this kind of aggressive behavior that it's basically a survival mechanism that you develop in order to survive in this kind of society, when you get there, you start to relax. Because you feel like if somebody doesn't respect you, you can step up and say, you know what, call the police.
But this is the thing. Can expats moving to Rome become like Romans?
Of course. But it's going to be hard. Because it's hard.
How can that happen?
It's easy when you grow up in a country where nothing really works properly, and you go in a country where...
Are you referring to Italy?
Yes! And you go in a country where everything seems to work properly. And so, for me, it's easy to adjust myself to something that works, for that someone that is used to something that works, to go in a place where nothing works. Because they need to learn it to adapt themselves to a completely messed up situation in which there are no rules. The people say, okay, the shop starts open at 5, they open at 6. Okay, we meet at 4, they show up at 5 or 6:30. Doesn't matter, it's okay, it's normal. And that's something very interesting, the way we perceive the time in Italy versus the way they perceive the time everywhere else in the world. The time is the time, and so you set up a time with someone for an appointment, for a date, or anything, the time has to be the time. If you show up 10 minutes later, that's not the right time. And if you go to Germany, for example, that's a funny thing that happened to me when I was living in Germany, when I was really young, and I had a date with a girl, and the appointment was at 4 o'clock sharp. I showed up at 4:10. She was not there anymore.
Well, that brings us to relationships, and you are also a marriage counselor, right?
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about the difference in relationship dynamics between Rome and LA?
Well, we're in a different world here, man.
Is that right?
Well, yeah, because...
What's the difference?
From my experience, the way we live a relationship is mostly related with our personal experience, how we grew up as children first, and then teenager, adults, and stuff like that. The relationship between men and women, they play on a different level. And for that reason, because I was giving a lot of thought to that, analyzing the situation, most Italians, they had a hard time to get along with American women.
Why is that?
Because Italian man is still attached to some old stereotype. So I'm the one in charge, I'm the one taking decision, I'm the one decide everything. When you go to relate to someone from LA, or from the United States, usually, but mostly LA, because LA is like a big town. If you go in the little town, even in the United States, it's a completely different story. But my experience was from LA, Los Angeles. It's like you're dealing with someone that doesn't like to get, doesn't like to be submissive. Mm-hmm. She likes to stand at the same level as you. On the other side, in my own experience, mm-hmm. I cannot speak for all the women, of course. What happened that I was able to see that they grew up most of the time without a father figure. And so they grew up without really being able to trust men in general. And so for that reason they have a hard time to have a decent relationship with them. Because if you were not able to trust the people that they were supposed to love you no matter what. If you don't grow up with this kind of love, unconditional love that you get from your parents that's supposed to love you just because you are your kids, this can create a problem for you to be able to trust people in life. It was shocking for me, for example, when I was living there, to have a relationship with women. Because in my case, I was like quite frustrated because I had a very hard time to relate with those women, with the women in LA, because...
Why is that?
I think because it was a cultural thing, mm-hmm. and whatever I was doing that for me was normal, for them it was not normal.
Mm. Can you give me an example?
Okay, I was working this counseling center, and hanging out with the colleague and friends, it's normal. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, for me it was normal. And so, and if you find someone is interested, that you might say, you know, maybe we can go out to get a coffee or something. You invite somebody out in your work environment with a colleague or something. Absolutely not. And to me, it was like, okay, I spend all my time with working. But I didn't know there was this kind of a policy. You're not allowed to date or go out.
So we're talking about the policy, right?
Yeah, we're talking about.
So the policy like this exists in the States, but it doesn't exist in Italy.
No.
Okay.
And for me, it was like complicated because I ended up kind of in a comfortable situation because I was invited, for example, one of the colleagues to go out for a coffee or something, and she would think I was trying to make a move her.
Just say if you try to do the same, if you did the same in Rome, what would they think?
Let's have a coffee. She might think he might be interested in me, maybe he likes me or something. So you can say yes or not, but that's it. But the thing ends all like that. If there is this not, because I never had this office policy about not being able to go out with colleagues or something, except in a big company, maybe, I don't know.
So are you saying that your invitation would be interpreted the same way in the States and in Italy, but here you'll be more free to accept it, whereas in the States this policy gets in the way?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
there is no big difference, but there is a difference how it's handled here as opposed to the States.
Another thing that's very interesting, it happened quite often to me, the expression of being straightforward. Because, for example, I noticed that I thought I was kind of person was quite being straightforward. But then when I moved to LA, even working with the clients and people, sometimes I noticed that there is a completely different way of the idea of being straightforward.
What's the difference?
The difference, because this happened to me, for example, I didn't know how to deal with the situation with this colleague, so the supervisor came up with the idea that maybe it was a cultural problem, and I realized it was a cultural problem. Because to say someone that working with this person you feel uncomfortable or you don't like that because when she does something you don't understand and you don't know what she's doing or something, it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate to me. It's not respectful. Versus over there, it was normal. So if you work with someone and you feel like uncomfortable with something, it's normal to say, okay, I'm okay with that, or I don't feel like it. I feel uncomfortable in this situation. We can work on that, and that's something that I realized that we are not straightforward. Definitely, we are not straightforward in Italy. It's not a personal thing. Like here, we take everything as a personal attack, and so we tend to overprotect ourselves and we shut down. That's why it's very important when you work with the people here to be kind of very respectful, knowing the culture and knowing what to talk, what you can talk about, and what you cannot talk about.
But the question is why? Why do you think there's this difference?
Like I said, because it's a cultural thing. Because
What created it?
we have a lot of creativity, even our vocabulary is very. We can say the same thing with 300 words, because we have a lot of adjective words to express the idea. I think it's a culture because, like I said, in my experience, it was not appropriate to say too many things on face people that you don't like or you don't appreciate of the other one. We consider this as being not respectful. And that can be a problem versus my experience in LA, where people are more comfortable when everything is out there. And so that's why I think it's a cultural thing. Because over there, it's more like, okay, there's a problem, we gotta talk about it. And I like this sort of what they call intervention. Are you familiar with the expression?
I'm not.
The intervention is something usually they do in psychology when they try to help like someone to deal with a problem that everybody around him they've been experiencing. For example, he has a problem with addiction or any kind of a problem, and they want to help the person to face the problem, because the first step is like facing the problem. After that, you can move forward. The word's intervention means that we organize some sort of a surprise meeting for the person that supposedly has a problem, and all together they give their own perception about what the problem is. And so when you get like your friends, your mom, your brother, your sister, your cousin, your wife, everybody keep telling you around in your world that you do have a problem, that's maybe could be the first time you start to realize that you do have a problem. Versus here, where everybody is like supporting the problem in order that the problem stays there. Because the problem is part of some sort of unbalanced situation, but it's okay like that.
What I'm interested to find out here is what's the essential difference between problems couples experience in LA and in Rome? What can you tell us from your experience?
I would think about the biggest difference would be like the presence of a structure. Because the structure defines a relationship, people, and the untold usually sets the rule, the regulation of the relationship. And it's so difficult to talk about that in Italy. It's less difficult in my experience in LA.
And when you say structure, what do you mean by structure?
I was referring to what we said before about the fact that Italians, they live rules in a very optional way. Versus my experience in LA, I think it's pretty much similar everywhere in the United States. The rules have to be followed because rules help people to live in a better way. And so even when you get married with someone, you define rules, okay? Versus here, it's more like, I don't know where we're going, but we go. And then we see what's going on. But the problem is that when we see what's going on, and you have to rely on your own strength, on your own structure, that's going to be the problem. Because if you are well structured, you can handle those situations. But if you have a very good structure for yourself, you can start to fall apart. And you might have a problem. If you have a problem, the other one has a problem too. So one of the two has to be the stronger of the situation, has to be the more structured. And it's supposed to help, but the one is a less structured.
But would the one with less structure accept that help?
Usually it will accept help if it's feel understood. And that's when we go back to the famous anger. If you really feel understood and respected, mostly than loved, that's make a difference.
Who do you see adapting with less problems here? Men moving to Italy or women moving to Italy? Specifically Rome.
Well, it's not easy because it's answer because usually men and women, they have the same way of thinking, and they come from a very structured country, and they come in a country where the structure doesn't really fit in. And so mostly has to do with their level of capability to face the situation, face the difficulty in life. And this is coming back to what I call resilienza, or what do you call it in English? Resilience. That the ability to face challenge in life and to be able to overcome the problems. And so I don't think it's more a question of being men or women, but more how much ability do we have to face challenge in life, and how much strength we have to face difficulty in life, and are we capable enough? And usually this has to do with the fact that you grow up in a kind of a healthy and a stable environment that make a big difference. Okay. And this is more like that's not a specific cultural thing. It's mostly connected with your background, your personal background, that make a difference.
So essentially, you're saying that two people with similar background, and I mean by similar I mean positive background, should have no problem relating to each other, no matter what the culture.
Well, most of the time when I talk with people, even in Italy, they say, well, I don't understand. He's coming from a very nice family. They got all the money, they got the position, they got all these, the status of the family. But I don't get it. Why don't get along with the parents? Why don't get along with each other?
They can still be dysfunctional.
Exactly. So that's why it's so difficult to define what you define as a stable environment in which you grew up. It's mostly has to do with the way the parents are dedicated to the children in a proper way. And how many people you know that are willing to do that? Not many. But those, they don't do that because they didn't learn how to do that. That's very simple. When you put too much expectation in your relationship, where the expectation come from? What's the original expectation? Your personal background.
Yeah.
And that's for the same reason, because someone that grew up with a dysfunctional father, for example, father figure, those kind of people, they grew up thinking that's the way it is.
Yeah.
So this dysfunctional system in a way or another, set up a pattern for the rest of life. And that's they wonder why those relationships didn't work. You will be looking unconsciously those kind of relationships in life. And in their mind, they felt they were loved in such dysfunctional way, but they were loved. And for them, this means real love. What's really happened to them in those situations is basically is that they've been experiencing a lot of fear in that situation, anxiety level, anxiety, fear, and they easily tend to confuse excitement with fear. And for them to set up the wrong pattern, those kind of women, in a conscious way, they will go looking for those abusing men, because the nice men, they will never be interested to them, because they will push them away because they don't fit the stereotype that they have in mind, the pattern they have in mind. And that's unfortunately that's we were talking about the way we grew up highly, strongly affect the way we relate with other people. Okay, we all have issues in our life that we carry on in our life, and so, but something that you can do when you do work on yourself, to see that if those issues they can decrease in terms of intensity, in terms of emotions, in terms of the high impact they might have on your everyday life. They may create a difference. So that's why going in counseling can make a difference, because you can reduce. They don't disappear completely, but definitely can reduce the effect, the devastating effect they may have on you, on your personality, and especially on your everyday life, because you are capable to recognize those special triggers coming from the past and to avoid those, obstacles and say, you know what, I want to do something different in my life. I want to change something. And the counselor is supposed to be able to recognize those patterns and stop them, and to create a new positive pattern that will help you to make a change, to make a difference.
Basically, you're saying that the most important thing to avoid possible problems in the future is to recognize patterns from the past and act upon them.
Yes. Fortunately, yes, because this pattern, mostly on a conscious level, they influence, affect every action, everything we do on everyday basis. Because it's the result of our life experience.
So, any advice you can give to someone moving to Rome?
Listen to the inner child, but in a proper way. Because to listen to your inner child is very important. So, whenever you decide that in your life you have like an impulse to do something, but then your mind needs to get into the way to say, we can give you free access to this impulse or not. So if you rationalize, even though too much rationalization is still a defense mechanism, doesn't help people to get better. So analyze the situation, other than rationalize. Analyze the situation. And so, but like, it's something you need to know about the place where you go. And so you need to know that if you come from another country, like we said before, a structured country, so if you decide to come to Italy, for example, as your work life experience, it's okay. If you decide to come to Italy because you want to live here, you need to have a target. You have to know what you want to do, what you're going to do, how you're going to make yourself living. Or if you know the system, how you're going to survive in this system. Because to survive in a system like Italy, with an American background, it's very difficult. It can be very tricky and complicated.
Okay, but basically you should trust your gut, but sync it with your brain as well.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. You have to think with your brain.
All right, this was great. Thank you very much, Massimo.
It was my pleasure.